Okay, we are going to recap NFL Week 13, more specifically the three games that I picked. Last week I was out of town because I was traveling to meet some family during Thanksgiving week, so no videos uploaded. But I did post my picks on Twitter. So the games that I picked was Texans plus 4.5 at the Colts. I got that one. Broncos minus 5.5 at the Commanders. That is the one that broke my winning streak. And then Vikings at the Seahawks. Seahawks minus 11.5. I did get that one. So this last week on week 13, I got two wins, one losses on my pick. Those last 4 weeks I was 9-1-1. 9 wins, one loss, and one push. So on the season, I am now 15 wins, 8 losses, and one push on my picks. Doing pretty good, but hopefully I am able to carry that momentum going forward through the rest of the season and stay healthily in the green. But before we get to my actual picks in the next video, we'll go over week 13 and the games that I picked. So first game here, Texans plus 4.5 at the Colts. The Texans didn't even need that spread. They just straight up won against the Colts, which is actually a bit surprising. I didn't expect them to straight up win, but I did have confidence that they would be able to cover the spread. That is kind of a middle of the ground spread there, more than the field goal, but less than a touchdown. That's kind of that gray area. There's a lot of opportunities there when choosing picks. But the reason I chose the Texans here was because when you look at the Colts these last few weeks, they've struggled when they aren't able to rush the ball. Now, that is not necessarily a negative on Daniel Jones, although it can look that way. It's more that the Colts become one-dimensional, and whenever any team becomes one-dimensional in the NFL, it becomes very hard to win games. So the Texans, with one of the best defenses in the NFL, if not the best, they were able to hold Jonathan Taylor and the Colts run game, and ultimately were able to prove successful against the Colts and Daniel Jones, who is actually injured. And that is something I noticed during this game. I was very, very surprised at the amount of drop back passes, shotgun related plays that were in this game. Considering Daniel Jones is injured and he's going up against that Texans D line. It was absolutely crazy. One thing I did also notice as well on the Texans side was that even though they did win this game, there were moments where they just had penalties on offense that completely killed their drives. So they had 9 penalties for 85 yards, absolute drive killers sometimes on offense, and that really ruined any kind of momentum they could have had drive to drive, is what I noticed. But going forward in the season, and specifically in this game, I don't know why the Colts are so, I guess, stubborn or arrogant on having long developing plays. These plays where Daniel Jones gets to sit back, and yes, they do have a great O-line, but he gets to sit back and just let the play develop for more than 2 or 3 seconds at a time. He's there sitting in the pocket for 4 or 5 seconds. You're facing the Texans. This is one of the best defenses in the NFL. So I was surprised they didn't do more rush attempts. I was surprised they didn't do more play action. I was expecting a lot more of that kind of fundamental football in terms of the game plan for this game for the Colts, and they just didn't do that. They did more drop back. I think they were trying to do less of play action because of the Daniel Jones injury, but I don't know. I think stepping back and just having that one-dimensional offense against this Texans defense proved to be a game killer as the Colts got taken down by the Texans. Now, what is next for each of these teams? Now, the Texans, they do have a path to the playoffs. It is difficult, but with these wins, they now have 4 straight wins in a row. They do have a kind of resurgence. CJ Stroud is back. What can they do going forward? I don't know. I think for the Texans, you just take it one game at a time. Don't even look at the playoffs. That might sound a little bit contradictory, but really just take it one game at a time. You have to meticulously game plan for these upcoming games. The next one you have against the Chiefs, that's going to be a tough one. The Cardinals should be doable. Raiders should be doable. But then you have the Chargers and the Colts to close out the season. So very tough schedule for the Texans going forward. They're going to have to play and really game plan against each of these teams individually and really do their research and homework against these games. So really just take it one game at a time. And if there is one thing the Texans must absolutely do is clean up those penalties, which is something that through coaching, through practice, through the walkthroughs that they do during the week, they're able to clean those up and have a more polished result and polished outcome and game plan, especially on offense, if you're going to have some success on offense and really complement the defense that you have there on the Texans. Now the Colts. The Colts should really be looking to secure the playoffs. They are kind of in that mix, that wild card mix. What they're able to do is they're able to lose 2 of the remaining games and still make the wild card. So they do have a little bit of a buffer here. However, their divisional games are very important. They pretty much need to win 2 out of the remaining 3. So if they split against the Jags and win the last one against the Texans, it's very doable for the Colts. Of course, with the offense that they have, defense, when Daniel Jones gets a little bit healthier, and they really just game plan a lot better with one of the best running backs this season and Jonathan Taylor, and just using him a little bit more. That is really what the Colts need to do. And also, I am surprised on the offense at the production lately on the Colts hasn't been up to par, but really, you need to go back to fundamental football, especially when you have injuries with your quarterback. Establish the run. And in terms of passing plays, your play action should be your bread and butter. So just rush with Jonathan Taylor and do a lot more play action that you've been doing recently, especially in this Texans game. I was very surprised. That should really be your bread and butter. And once you are able to do that, it creates space for Jonathan Taylor because the linebackers don't know, and the safeties that are close to the line of scrimmage don't know if they should drop back into coverage or they should go attack Jonathan Taylor on the run. It just creates space for Jonathan Taylor to play with, and also it creates a little bit of hesitancy, if I'm saying that correctly, and a little bit of time and rhythm for the receivers to develop the routes and Daniel Jones to throw on play action plays. So that is the number one thing they need to do on offense. On defense, one thing we did learn from this game, this is a Texans offense that has not been productive, is the Colts defense. They are not really dependable in key situations. They did lose Sauce Gardner, so let's see how it goes for the Colts going forward, especially with that injury. But this Texans offense was able to kind of secure the game against this Colts defense that kind of just allowed them to run down the clock, get some first downs at the end of the game, and that was that. So the Colts, fundamentally, they should really lean into what they have. They have a good O-line, great O-line. They have a great running back. Do that first, establish the run first, and use that to your advantage to complement the defense a little bit more and not have your defense be the unit that is out there at the end of the game. It should be your offense going out and just burning time, kneeling for the win going forward. All right, Broncos -5.5 at the Commanders this next game. This one was so close for me to win this pick as well. It got to overtime and the Broncos had a touchdown, and I was like, oh, maybe that 5.5 will come through. And there was that moment where that fourth down where it was incomplete, but it turned out as a pass interference. Commanders got the touchdown. They went for 2, which was very brave, and I really liked that decision. They didn't want to end with a tie or have the Broncos get the ball back, so I really liked that decision. It was just this Broncos defense is awesome. They just step up in the biggest moments. And the game itself, Marcus Mariota had a valiant effort. It was an impressive showing from him, and I think this is a performance that he should be pretty proud of. It's a little bit hard to say considering the Commanders lost. They're only a 3-win team, and Marcus Mariota had that one terrible pick. But aside from that, I mean, you go up against a defense like the Broncos, pressured him like crazy. The team still scored 26, went to overtime against one of the best defenses in the league, one of the best teams record-wise in the league. So there is some positives to take away from the Commanders in this game. Now, I was extremely frustrated when looking at the Broncos in this game. I have a ton of stats that I went through that I want to share, but I was extremely frustrated. This was a team that I'm not even like rooting for necessarily, but I was extremely frustrated because you have one of the best defenses in the league, one of the best O-lines in the league, Not all teams each year have that kind of combination at your disposal in terms of defense and a great O-line. And I am just absolutely stunned at the kind of inconsistency and inability for the offense to kind of score and maintain drives. And I think it has to do with the game plan and the play calls. So a little bit of stats I'm going to go through here. I looked at the pass chart for Bo Nix in this game. Most of his passes were at the 5-yard line or shorter. The Broncos running backs only had 20 carries in this game. And this is against a Washington team that the whole season has had a bad run defense. I will give you a little bit more in a little bit on the Washington side, but the last time the Broncos rushed for more than 100 yards in a game, this is a crazy stat, was back in week 8 against the Cowboys. That's what, 6 weeks ago now, more than a month ago, and that's a game that the Broncos won by a lot, by 44-24. I don't know, it's against that Cowboys defense, you're going to say, but still, it's a little bit of storytelling here. The Broncos, when they're able to rush and use that great O-line and use the running backs to establish the run, they are able to make that passing game a lot more scary or a lot more kind of unpredictable. They are really, really leaning into Bo Nix in the game plan, and I don't think that's winning football. You want to know why? You look last year at Josh Allen. He won MVP. They took the ball out of his hands, and he had one of the greatest seasons that he's ever had. A lot of touchdowns, not a lot of turnovers, and that's because when you are able to establish the run, it makes it so much easier for the rest of the team to do their job. Number one is you control the time of possession, you control the game, you set the tempo of the game. Number two, it allows your playmakers more space and more capability to actually make plays, like Josh Allen on the Bills last season. And there is only so far you can go in the playoffs by leaning on your quarterback. A little bit more on that in a while. The running game is absolutely important in the game of football, and I am surprised that the Broncos are not leaning into that a little bit more. The last time the Broncos won the time of possession battle was in Week 10 against the Raiders, and with that defense, with that O-lines that the Broncos have, they should win this battle each and every single game that they have. The last 4 weeks, Denver has won no more than 3 points in a game. That is because of all those issues on the running side of the ball in the Broncos, and the offensive issues. They need to establish the run more, lean more into that O-line that you have. And you're able to do that, it opens up a lot more possibilities. So I'm a little bit surprised that they're not doing these in these games. Now they are winning these close games because of that talent that they have on defense. But if your offense wants to complement that defense, the number one thing you can do as a way of saying thank you to that defense is to run the ball, control the time of possession on offense, keep your defense off the field, which is a little bit crazy to say considering Denver has a great defense. But if you're able to limit the amount of time the defense actually goes out there and has to have a stop, then they can stay fresh, they can stay healthy through an entire season. It's a long season, so come playoff time, you want those guys to be healthy, not be burned out. So number one thing the Broncos, I think, have to do going forward is control the time of possession, and you are able to do that with that O-line by running the ball more and just doing a little bit more on the offensive side of the ball. And you cannot in playoffs games put this offense on the back of Bo Nix. We saw what happened last season with Josh Allen, or was it last season? Yeah, it was last season with Josh Allen, and this season as well. When you are putting the whole offense on the back of a quarterback, it's not sustainable, and you're not able to be consistent throughout these games and throughout the season. You need to have complementary football and need to have a balanced approach on offense, and if you want to make it to the Super Bowl, and if you want to have a good shot at winning the Super Bowl. For the Commanders, this is a little bit more negative on what's kind of next, but you're out of the playoff picture. This was not anything new, not new news. but just do not rush Jaden Daniels back. You have a solid backup quarterback in Marcus Mariota, and just prepare for the offseason. All right, Vikings at Seahawks. I am not going to spend a lot of time on this game. There is not many takeaways from this game. There is, however, one funny takeaway is that if you remember that famous NBA quote where that one NBA player said, "I am closer to LeBron than you are to me." That is what it felt like when we watched Brosmer, the Vikings quarterback, step in that game and threw 4 picks. Did not look great out there at all. One of the kind of worst, I think, performances that you can have as a quarterback, especially if you're a backup coming in. And man, we have been burning JJ so far this season, but there is a gap between an NFL level quarterback and just everyone else, right? There is a gap between an NFL quarterback and the best of the best, like those Josh Allens, Mahomes, Brady's, so on and so forth. But it seems like there's an even bigger gap between just a regular quarterback and an NFL quarterback. And I think that was displayed here in this game for the Vikings in an unfortunate manner. Now, you were going against one of the best defenses, or a great defense in the Seahawks, but still, it was a tough showing for the Vikings. So what's next for the Vikings? You are not making the playoffs. This isn't good new news either. I think I said this like 2-3 weeks ago when I chose a game that the Vikings were playing as well in my picks. But the number one thing they need to do is develop JJ McCarthy, start him as many games as you can the rest of the season, and just sit down at the end of the season and talk as a front office and decide if what you see with JJ is promising or it's something you can work on, or just go another direction for your quarterback. Seahawks, focusing on their side and what's kind of next. I think for the Seahawks, I know they're trying to get that number 1 seed, but their main focus should be on the rematch with the Rams. And their focus should be on extending drives and staying out of third and long situations. The reason I say this is because when you go back and watch that Seattle and LA Rams game, the number one thing that was kind of causing these turnovers was the Seahawks were in situations a lot of the time on offense when they were on third and long against the Rams, and they just had to throw. So it becomes one-dimensional. You have stunts on the defensive side on the Rams. It was very hard to deal with as a quarterback, and that led to the 4 interceptions that ultimately decided the game. Seattle, even with those 4 interceptions, those weeks ago, still had a chance to win the game. So if they're able to clean that up on offense and just have a more consistent drives and more consistent flow to their game plan, they're able to very easily not only stay in the game against this rematch with the Rams coming up, but also be very dangerous come playoff time. So I think that's number one thing for the Seahawks to focus on is just be decent, just be good on first and second down. Don't take any big risks, which is a little bit going away from the Seahawks identity. I know they're very explosive on offense, but that's gambling. You can only get so far on gambling. If you are an NFL team, if you want to make a deep run, if you want to win the Super Bowl, you have to know when to gamble and know when to be consistent. When to be consistent, first and second downs, you want to get that third and short situations, gamble when you really need to. That is my takeaway for the Seahawks. So those were the 3 games that I picked in week 13. Unfortunately, the Broncos broke my kind of winning record these last 4 weeks, but it's okay. I'm still 15-8-1 on the season, and let's see who I pick in this week 14. There are some interesting matchups. The lines are a little bit interesting as well, so we'll see what I decide to do, but I'll see you next time.